The story of the Carpenters began in the 1960s when brother and sister Richard and Karen Carpenter, who grew up in a family with a love of music, began performing together. Richard, the older of the two, was a musical genius from an early age. His piano-playing abilities and love of arrangements became the foundation of the band's sound. Karen, on the other hand, initially had no vivid interest in music and focused on playing drums. However, her natural vocals proved so unique that they quickly brought her to the forefront. The band began by performing at local events in their native New Haven, Connecticut. Their early recordings featured an experimental jazz sound that set them apart from many other young bands. In 1969, fate smiled on the Carpenters. They were noticed by the famous producer Herb Alpert of the A&M Records label. It was he who suggested the duo to record the song They Long to Be. In 1970, this track exploded the charts and became their first #1 hit. Karen's voice, soft, deep, filled with warmth and melancholy, became their calling card. Their songs resonated with listeners around the world, and the Carpenters quickly became one of the most popular artists of the 70s. But with success came criticism of the band. In the 70s, the music scene was saturated with rebellious rock bands and experimental artists. Against this background, the Carpenters were often criticized for their too pure and sugary sound. Some rock critics called them perfect elevator music or a band for housewives. The biggest strain came from famous artists such as John Lennon, who allegedly mocked their style. Karen and Richard themselves did not stay away and sometimes responded sharply to such accusations. Karen once stated, "Melody and soulfulness is not a crime. Let them call us boring, but our music makes people happy." This conflict between critics and the duo became a scandal that did not subside for many years, especially in the context of their participation in prestigious music awards, where some artists and fans felt that their awards were not deserved. The Carpenters were the epitome of soft rock, a genre that combined melody, romance, and lightness. Their music was characterized by impeccable arrangements that showcased Richard's talent as a producer and composer. Tracks such as Superstar, Yesterday Once More, and Top of the World were mesmerizing in their simplicity and beauty. Interestingly, the song Superstar was recorded from the first take. Karen sang the vocal part of this song from the first time, and it was this recording that was used on the album. The band stood out from the more hard and rebellious rockers of the 70s, and although their style was criticized for being too sweet and pop, that same purity brought them a huge fan base. Millions of listeners found comfort in their sincere and melodic music. Despite the band's enormous success, Karen and Richard Carpenter repeatedly ran into problems with their label, A&M Records. Herb Alpert, the label head, was a big fan of the duo, but his team insisted that the Carpenters release more and more commercially successful songs. Richard, being a perfectionist, often clashed with the producers over control of the creative process. He wanted their music to remain sincere and not be influenced by the market. However, the pressure to record new hits and tour constantly led to tension. It was believed that these conflicts were what contributed to Karen's physical and emotional burnout. Interestingly, in the mid-70s, the Carpenters were involved in the creation of television shows that promoted their music. One of these shows, The Carpenters at Christmas, was criticized for being too sterile and staged. Karen and Richard wanted the show to reflect their personal style and sincerity, but the producers insisted on adding theatricality and comedic elements that they felt would appeal to a wider audience. This led to conflicts on set, and Karen was unhappy that the result did not meet her expectations. She later stated in an interview that taking part in these projects was a mistake. Another scandal was related to Karen's personal life. In 1980, she married businessman Tom Burris. At first glance, their union seemed perfect, but soon there were rumors about problems in the relationship. Karen wanted to have children, but later it became known that Tom hid from her that he was incapable of conceiving. This fact came as a shock to Karen, who felt betrayed. Their marriage lasted only 14 months and ended in a high-profile divorce. Despite the success of the band, the physical and mental health of some of the members was not so good. By the early 80s, Richard Carpenter was at the center of a scandal involving his addiction to sleeping pills. The stress of his job, the need to manage all aspects of the band's career, and constant touring led to him taking medication to cope with insomnia. Richard's addiction became apparent to those around him when he began to lose concentration and his health deteriorated. Karen actively tried to support her brother and insisted that he undergo treatment. However, in the press, the incident led to speculation about the breakup of the Carpenters and internal conflicts between brother and sister. Richard eventually sought help and underwent rehabilitation. But this scandal left a shadow on the band's reputation as their idealized image of purity began to erode in the public eye. But one of the most high-profile and tragic moments in the history of the Carpenters was Karen Carpenter's struggle with anorexia. In the 70s, the topic of eating disorders was practically taboo, and society had little understanding of their nature. When Karen began to lose weight rapidly, it caused a wave of rumors and speculation. Fans and the press took notice of her appearance, which seemed increasingly morbid. In interviews, Karen denied having health problems, which only fueled interest in her personal life. In 1981, Karen underwent treatment, but the scandal was reignited when it was revealed that she had tried to fight anorexia on her own, resorting to controversial methods, including taking weight loss drugs. After her death in 1983, allegations against the music industry came to the forefront. Many critics claimed that the pressure put on Karen was one of the reasons for her tragedy. The scandal highlighted not only the problem of eating disorders, but also the cruel beauty standards in show business. After Karen's death, another scandal involving unreleased recordings by the Carpenters surfaced. Richard was accused of withholding some of the material that could have been released as a posthumous album. Some fans and music critics insisted that the recordings were Karen's legacy that should be available to the world. Richard, however, argued that he did not want to release music that did not meet the band's standards of quality. This issue still remains controversial among fans to this day. After Karen's death, Richard Carpenter continued his musical career, arranging and re-releasing the band's material. However, the magic of the Carpenters lay in the brother and sister duo, and her passing changed their sound forever. The band's songs have been played in movies, TV shows, and on the radio, continuing to find new fans. The Carpenters became a true cultural phenomenon, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire artists and listeners. Their music is a reminder of the power of melody, honesty, and soulfulness. Karen Carpenter, whose life was cut short too soon, remains one of the most beloved vocalists of all time, and Richard Carpenter remains a symbol of talent and dedication to the arts. The story of the Carpenters is one of harmony, love of music, and fighting for your dreams despite tragedy and hardship. And as long as their songs are played, they continue to live on in the hearts of their fans.